Hi, I'm Denise DeFara. Today's video, I thought I would have a chat about some things. I realise I'm feeling quite under pressure because again, I've got another deadline to meet and it seems I can do almost anything but start new work right now. And so I'm just going to circle around it and come in from another way. And what I'm noticing is getting these vlogs done has been so kind of nurturing for me. So I don't want to let this weekly vlog die. I don't want it to sort of be pushed aside. There's art to make. I've got to do the work that, to me, this is now part of my weekly work or part of my sharing. So I thought, I'm all over the place. So one of the things that happened in recent times that I don't think I've talked about yet on the vlog was that Margaret Petrie from the podcast Authentic Obsessions, she actually saw one of my posts on Instagram where I shared about, it was back in, I don't know what date, but it was probably late last year. I was sharing about the sadnesses that of moving, being in Sydney, kind of lonely-ish, and I was making very small paintings, and you might have heard me say it before, but sometimes when my confidence is smaller or when I'm feeling more insular and less robust, one of the ways for me to nurture myself and my art practice is to just make smaller pieces. So I had some small canvases that hadn't sold from a few years back, and so I just decided to paint over them and not worry about what were they going to be, just remake them. And so I did all that, and I decided to sit with those canvases at that time and just speak from my heart, sort of part like writing a poem, part just tuning in and listening. What was I feeling? What was my heart feeling? The sort of emotions, and seeing what the painting wanted to say back to me, or what was she feeling? Is she me? She could be me, an aspect of me, that kind of thing, where the idea that often when we paint figures, we are painting ourselves. That could be true. And so Margaret saw some of these posts and she really loves hearing the story behind the art. And so over some months we communicated and she invited me onto her podcast. So I had an interview with her, and I'll put the link below, and all about my authentic obsessions. I've got quite a number of them. Tea would definitely be one, but I'm not sure if that one made a strong mention in the podcast or not. I haven't actually gone back and re-listened to it. It's funny, I have to re-listen a lot to my vlogs, my videos that I make, because I have to edit them. But I haven't gone back and listened to the podcast yet. I think I had quite a vulnerability hangover after it. And so I just didn't feel robust in myself to listen to it and then be kind of critical about it. So I thought I'll just leave that at the moment and carry on and go forward. So that's what I've sort of been doing. And then just this past weekend, Phillip and I went away for 4 days to Jervis Bay, and that's actually where a lovely Australian artist that many of you, if not all of you, would have heard of, Tracy Verdugo, that's where she lives. So Tracy and I are friends, and so I was just so delighted. She invited us to come over for dinner, so we joined her for dinner. I'll pop a little photo of us. And it was a very interesting kind of evening because Phillip and Marco hadn't met before, and the four of us just got on so well. It was really special. And a strange thing happened to me early in the piece. About 15 minutes into it, I started to see half of things, which happens when I'm getting a migraine. So I couldn't help but think, in years gone by, that would have meant we just had to pack up and go home. Like that the body response of whatever was going on to cause a migraine would derail my life for the next 2-3 days. So it was really quite an interesting thing that happened. Marco offered me some medication that he had. I just had that and then laid down on their couch for 10-15 minutes. So here I was, first time visiting them in their home, invited for dinner, and I had to lie on the couch for 15 minutes until really gratefully the headache didn't arrive and my vision returned to normal. But it was such a bizarre thing that happened in my mind, that experience, because I was so looking forward to going and visiting Tracy and Marco. I had been looking forward to it for months, because it's been talked about for several months, because since Tracy heard I was moving down closer, she said, oh, you'll be nearer us, you'll have to come and visit. And you know, that's 8 months ago or something. So it's been a long time coming, and I was really excited. Being able to visit a artist's home, especially Tracy's, because it's like, it reminds me of Frida Kahlo's, because Marco has Mexican in his background. They've just created this most wonderful home and so many things that they've collected. So it was really, it was just beautiful to be able to walk into their sanctuary that they've created, really. But where am I going with this? That's right. And so then the rest of the weekend we went walking, and so I've shared with you I'm coming on this video. I'm sharing, I took a lot of snippets along the way of the beautiful area that we were walking around in at Jervis Bay, because I knew that I wasn't going to be doing any art enough to make my video this week. And I thought, but I need to keep going. I need to have this continuum that I'm going to keep going week after week. I'm going to bring a vlog. So this one has much less art, and it will have quite a bit of nature at the end. I'm going to leave it in for you so that you can see some of the beautiful landscape that we went to visit. And I feel like a little kid who's met and gone to my, a bestie's place, made a new friend, because I hadn't been to Tracy's homeland, her town, her beach, her home before. It feels like meeting a new a friend, and the fact that you find you've got so much in common, and it's like I'm so excited to go see her again. So there's a lovely thing that's happened there for me. So I look forward to being able to visit Tracy again. And yeah, I think it really highlighted the way that we don't have that yet around us close by in Sydney. So yeah, shout out to anybody who has moved and you haven't got your close friends around you and you feel really quite lonely. I understand that now from quite a different place. I have, it's been very, I don't know, illuminating to consider it. So today I thought I would share with you, I just randomly opened this book and I really recommend it, The Sound of Paper by Julia Cameron, our wonderful artist, writer who wrote The Artist's Way. And I thought, let's see if I just open up a chapter. I've kind of thought a lot that there's so many snippets in here that I'd love to share with you. So I'm going to read you a little chapter today. So it's called Soldiering Through. I won't read the first parts, but she's talking about the droughts and the fires in Colorado. So I think this would have been quite a number of years ago. And so she said, in order to be able to write at all, and especially when pinched by a creative drought, we must be willing to write badly. This doesn't mean we necessarily will write badly, but that we are willing to write no matter what, to soldier through at the page, even as our ego is shrieking, "This is terrible, you really cannot write," and the same is true for all other arts as well. It is always the ego in the form of our inner perfectionist that can be identified like the letter burner as the first cause of damage. The ego doesn't want us merely to be able to write, paint, sculpt, dance, or act. It wants us to do these things well, to do them brilliantly, or here is where the drought sets in, not at all. Writer Tilly Olsen calls the perfectionist the knife of the perfectionist attitude in art. She is accurate in this. The perfectionist wants us to be able to work perfectly. It doesn't want to bother with rough drafts or sketches. It is out for the polished final product, and it wants us to produce that first and all the time. It is the perfectionist fingering the blade of the knife that keeps us from working much of the time. The perfectionist cajoles the ego into taking it seriously, and the ego, which wants desperately to control our art, is glad to have something in its power after all. The ego has the power to keep us from making art, but it does not really have the power to make art itself. Art is an act of the soul. When we're in the grips of a creative drought, we do feel the knife blade at our throat. We do feel the demand. Stay right where you are, don't get fancy, you're not going anywhere. And the not going anywhere gets to be a habit. The 12-step program Arts Anonymous, an excellent program. I've not heard of that. Arts Anonymous talks about the anorectic high that an artist can get from avoiding art. The fact that we are not making art becomes the obsessive something that fills our days. And make no mistake, I'm not writing takes up far more energy and space than I'm writing ever will. It takes humility to dismantle a creative block, and it takes the vigilant practice of humility to keep from building one. The ego wants to claim as much territory as we will allow it. I am brilliant is what the ego is after, not I am of service, not I am serviceable. And yet, it is in trying to be of service, in showing up at the page and listening rather than speaking, that we begin to make art that transcends the ego's brittle boundaries. At root, the ego is not an innovator. It wants its art to be validated, stamped with official approval. In this sense, it wants its art to be safe rather than daring. When we are willing to make what wants to be made, rather than make what we want, we become open to new directions. We begin to be able to let some of the seriousness out of our artist's life, and we begin to let some of the playfulness back in. It is an ironic fact that most great artists are inherently playful. As Carl Jung remarked, creativity is the mind at play with the materials that it loves. This is a far cry from production line creativity. The ego wants to be able to mass produce excellence, but excellence is handcrafted. The ego wants to remove the elements of risk and daring and leave us with a sanitized version of art that is curiously castrated. A potent artist is a free artist. And a free artist is one who is able to work well or poorly with equal impunity. By being able to work poorly, we are free to innovate and to seek new ways of making our art. Just as modern dance embraces many previous awkward postures to create a new dance language, so too does ego-free art contain the freedom to embrace new forms. And at the end of each chapter, Julia has a little section that you can kind of workshop with yourself or journal with yourself. So she says, try this. Most artists unconsciously carry an inner perfectionist. This sentinel is often scornful and sarcastic, cutting us down to size whenever we seek to grow creatively larger. Who do you think you are? The perfectionist asks. Do you really think you can pull that off? Take pen in hand, number from 1 to 10. Complete the following phrase as rapidly as possible. 1. If my ego would allow it, I'd try. And you go, you ask yourself that 10 times, or you write that 10 times. If my ego would allow it, I'd try, ... So see if you feel called to do that. That might be really helpful. She goes, as this brief exercise shows, there is often considerable creative territory that we yearn for, from which we allow our perfectionist to turn us aside. Select one risk from your list of 10. Take a first step toward executing it. So that might be enough of me talking for today. I might leave it there, and I've got a couple of little snippets of things that I'm looking into. But really I think I'm realizing, okay, so is it the perfectionist that wants all of the art that I'm going to make in the next 2 weeks to be good enough for the Sydney Affordable Art Fair? Yep, that's the brief. And that feels like a lot to put on it. So that will be my task in the next 10 days, to hold that lightly, and then continue and just see what wants to be made as well. And so I'll see if I'll take little videos along the way of that. But that's all for this week. And also, really welcome. Thank you for joining me, all the new followers. It was quite something kind of unusual happened with the last week's vlog, that it got over 4,000 views, or it was shown to over 4,000 people, and the numbers of my followers jumped by about 200. So that doesn't happen every week. That was quite extraordinary. And you know what? It was actually a beautiful little gift to my ego, I would say, because spending time with Tracy and seeing that she's built such a huge audience and she's playing such a bigger game than I've ever dreamed possible for me. So that was what I think was very awakening and something in me, to spend that little time with Tracy and see what she's allowed and what she's created in her artist life business was quite heart-opening. And so sometimes I get quite, there's a disappointment that I've been at this for so long but not grown things to the degree that some of my peers have. But that's just part of the story, and we all have a whole other part of our story. But for now, it did make me think, what if I let myself believe in a bigger game for myself? And I wonder about that with you. How do you hold that in your life? Is that something that's, does that come up for you, or are you in a different time of life where art is solely for your creative pleasure or hobby? Feel free to reach out and message me, or talk, or comment below if you feel like mentioning something about that, if that would help for you to say something out loud. Sometimes it can help to declare something to complete strangers, especially us strangers that are in the creative world, because we really get it. We understand when a peer says, I'd really like to make this move, or I'd really like to practice this and get better at that. And it can just be really encouraging. So may that be a support and encouragement to you to do something, in the next weeks that you've really been maybe putting off, but you'd really like to try. I'd encourage you to do it. So thanks so much for joining me here, and I look forward to continuing to connect with you along the way. Bye. I'm having some thoughts about this piece. I've got 3 prints that I decided to paint over because they didn't sell as the prints that they were. and I thought they're perfectly great canvas, so I'm starting again with them. But as I'm looking at the fact that I can still see this lady quite clearly at the moment, I'm tempted to keep some aspects of her and give her a whole new room to be in and background. So that's what's coming upon my mind at the moment. It was funny because Phillip said, oh, there's a heron, accidental heron shape, which I've always thought of as a bit of a totem animal for me, the heron. So that was funny, but yeah, that'll get painted out. But yeah, that's something I thought I'd show the before, and we'll see what happens after. I decided I needed to cover the entire surface with a new layer of paint.
I took Phillip to Gertrude and Alice Cafe, which is what I mentioned on the podcast. So this is one of my favourite places in Bondi. I came into my spare room this morning, and my eldest daughter was home on the weekend, and she stayed in this room, and she had to leave early in the morning, and I came in to collect this coffee cup and take it to the wash, and something made me just put it back, and I've got my little sketchbook with me, and I'm feeling like sentimental mum here. I thought, no, let me do a little sketch of that before I take it and wash it up, because this speaks of something special to me. My daughter was here and she's gone home, and the cup is here, and she used it. She had a coffee and hurriedly getting herself packed up ready to go to the airport at about 6 in the morning. So yeah, I'm going to see if I can do a little sketch of this for my little sketchbook, because then I'll remember it even more, and so that feels that really feels special to my heart. I'm in my studio trying to get myself back into making some paintings. I had a lovely breakaway, and so I've just convinced myself to play with some inks. I'd seen a video by Tracy Verdugo, and she worked from a photo. It was a lot looser than this, but I kept looking at this sketch that I'd made of one of my paintings, which is an inspiration from a Matisse painting. And then I just thought it would be funny that I put 3 different faces in this, and they've all got sort of different moods. Just trying to loosen up and play, and using these inks. Dale Rowney, Payne's Grey, and oh, Okay, so in indigo, I might have been picking them up by mistake actually. I thought I had both Payne's Greys, but there you go. A bit sweet.